Welcome to the Night Shift with Luke Berner,
Yeah, that would be me.
a guardian of everything that's fair in this dog-eat-dog world.
This radio veteran never imagined he'd be the voice of the trucking industry.
We didn't set out to be, but there are so many trucks out there, and it's a lonely job. 13353. Oh, look, we've had a lot of follow-up and a lot of emails from...
When 4 tip-top drivers told 7:30 last month that they'd been pushed to breaking point, the phones here lit up.
After watching the 7:30 report, we touched on it because we know we have a lot of drivers listening to us. We had no idea the impact that this would have.
Coming up next to Ron in Adelaide, the phones went absolutely bananas, not just phones, social media, email. But one thing that was consistent with all the feedback was paranoia and fear.
The story of one bread truck driver who worked for weeks on end struck a chord with listeners.
There was a bloke, Graham, who was on his daily bread delivery run last year. He said he hit rock bottom. He had to ring Lifeline. Something's not right.
I look back at the figures and I was earning over $1,000 less a week from when I first started.
So why has your pay gone backwards?
You can ask that question as many times as you like, there is no answer.
The pressure these tip-top workers felt wasn't just financial. Some delivery drivers were also dangerously fatigued.
Did Tip Top know that you'd worked more than 100 days straight?
Absolutely. I made that quite clear that I didn't have a relief driver. I had to work consecutive days like that. They knew.
I'm afraid that someone's going to die eventually, you know? Someone will.
We finished with that segment and had moved on. Jess kept getting call after call after call from not just tip-top drivers, but other drivers saying, I'm in the same boat and I don't know what to do.
Where are you calling from today? All right, I'll pop you in the queue.
Tip-top, are they talking?
You can talk to them, but you sort of get shut down at the end of the day. They just say, that's your contract, that's it. You know, if you don't like it, give us our 3 months and we'll find somebody else to do it.
Gee, it's compassionate, isn't it?
Tip-top says the distribution of its bread is working well, but it's conducting an internal investigation into the allegations raised by 7:30. The program has now uncovered more cases of tip-top delivery drivers drowning in debt or having their pay repeatedly cut. Barry Swan was one of them. His job with tip-top would be his last.
He was the most hard-working man that I've known. He worked 7 days a week, long hours, and then come home. He doted all over his wife.
So this one I picked up from an accident probably 2 years ago, Neal.
Barry's stepson Swan Morris drives trucks for a living and knows exactly how demanding the job can be.
On numerous occasions I used to, after working my jobs, I'd go out on the run with him and just to help him out because he was just knackered.
Swan and Renee Morris were concerned that the 62-year-old had remortgaged his house to buy the truck he needed as an owner-driver with Tip-Top.
He would fall behind, you know, like they were still paying off their house. He had a truck to pay off, had a business to run. He couldn't afford to have a driver in doing the job permanently or part-time.
You could tell that it was destroying him, it was killing him.
After returning to Tip-Top's Western Sydney depot in 2009, Barry Swan suffered a heart attack. His family says he hadn't been off in months.
I got a phone call from my wife Renee. I wasn't told anything else about it until I picked up his car. And then I found out about 2 hours later that he'd had a heart attack. They didn't want to tell me while I was driving trucks. And they told me to go to Bankstown Hospital, where he was already deceased by the time I got there.
Why do you think he had a heart attack?
The hours 7 days a week, 12, 14-hour days, plus travel time. So he's doing, 16 to 17 hours a day.
And so his widow, was she left in debt?
Yes,
And do we know how much?
quite a lot. Yeah, quite a lot.
So even though
Even though once the truck got repossessed, she still had to pay money out on the truck. It tore the family apart.
After his death, Barry Swan's widow struggled to manage the one-man trucking business he'd left behind.
Once he passed away, the truck still had to be paid. Tip Top offered to put in drivers for her at her cost. The financial burden wasn't worth it. It was too high.
so she wasn't making money?
No. If anything, I think she was actually losing money.
Vicki James can't understand why Tip Top didn't do more for her delivery driver husband, who'd worked for the company for almost a decade. In 2014, Ian James was diagnosed with lung cancer.
He actually had a lung removed and he wasn't able to work for a while, but when he did go back to work, there was a situation where he wasn't very well, and that night I offered to ring in and he said, no, I'll ring in, and the attitude was, you're under contract, you have to fulfil your contract and drive or find a driver. Well, we couldn't find anyone, so Ian had to go to work. As ill as he was, he fulfilled the contract and worked.
Vicki James says her husband's pay had shrunk by more than $1,000 a week before he got sick, and she says it kept going backwards.
Tip Top would just say, well, these are the costs. It's costing us more, so therefore we have to pass on to the drivers, and therefore the wages would decrease.
While he was undergoing chemotherapy, Ian James had no choice but to employ a relief driver. Paying them the required wage meant he was no longer making any money from his delivery run. Vicki James says her wage was the only thing keeping the family afloat financially.
He didn't have anything to survive on, and when you've got cancer, there's a lot of bills to pay. There were days he just couldn't do it, because obviously there were days where he was very, very sick, but no, Tip Top weren't concerned.
When Ian James was gravely ill in early 2015, a Tip Top manager came to his home with a new proposal. Vicki James says Tip Top wanted to almost double the number of outlets he delivered to, something she says would have made his run longer and unprofitable.
I could just hear the disgust in Ian's voice continually saying, it's not physically possible. Crossing backwards and forwards and that many drops and the amount of money you're offering me and you're expecting me to go back to the depot. It can't be done in that time frame, and I will go bankrupt. I think they thought, well, he'd just go along with it. But he wasn't a fool.
Instead, Ian James chose to give up the run. A month later, he was back in hospital and he died later that year.
They sent me flowers the day of his funeral. They were lucky they didn't get them back, because I was so disappointed and disgusted to get sorry to hear of Ian's death. But it was infuriated me.
Tip Top wouldn't answer questions about these cases. The company says it's facing challenging market conditions and has made operational changes so that it remains competitive. Tip Top says it's not aware of drivers working without breaks, and as independent contractors, the onus is on them to manage fatigue and employ relief drivers. But these families believe that Tip Top should take more responsibility for its delivery drivers' welfare.
It's going to come to a point where either more people are going to go bankrupt, other people are going to die. It's as simple as that.
Pay your drivers more and let them have a break, don't work them to death.
They've got to look after their drivers. They want to keep their reputation, their reliability. Look after your drivers.